Welcome to Let's Talk Near Death, the podcast show where we talk about life, death, and experiences somewhere in between. I'm Kirsty Salisbury, the host of the show, and join me as I talk to everyday people with not so everyday experiences. Let's talk near death. Joining me today, we have got Josh Roche. And Josh, you had a near-death experience. How old were you when that happened?
So, Kirsty, I was 11 years old at the time, active young guy. I'd been invited to have a sleepover with a buddy, and I went to have that sleepover, and he challenged me to race to the pool. He had a big swimming pool. So I then accepted the challenge, got my togs on, and went sprinting to the pool. And he went one way and I went another.
Yeah.
And so what happened is I ran through a ranch slider. I ran through a sliding door, okay? So.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So you just didn't see it?
Didn't see it. It was closed, and I went through this window, a big, thick glass ranch slider. It sounded like a bomb going off. I to this day, still can just sit with that memory and feel that sort of compression change in the room as I exploded through the ranch slider. So a massive impact, huge explosion. And I came out the other side of that window and turned around, and just glass was falling off what was left in the ranch slider, crashing onto the ground. And then it was, probably a lot of parallels with these sort of stories. Time sort of slowed down in a huge way. Time dilated and everything slowed down. And I remember feeling immediately very, very cold, like freezing, chill like this. And I didn't really feel pain, but I looked down and I saw just pieces of flesh hanging off my body.
Oh my goodness!
And then I felt this warmth running down my body, which was my blood, and I was bleeding profusely from multiple deep lacerations all down my legs, down my arms. And I looked down on the ground, and this pool of blood was just accelerating away from my body really, really quickly. I looked back again, and I came back into my body and just again looked down on the ground, on the concrete patio, and just saw this just so quickly, this pool of blood accelerating. And as I bled out onto the ground, so I felt myself getting lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. And then there was sort of movement back into the body of, oh my God, this is serious. I don't know what to do. Pain, all sorts of really, really huge pain signals, overwhelming pain signals, but at the same time, a kind of transference out of the body into a sort of semi-detached perspective where there was no pain, no drama, no worries, no concern, which was really weird. And then I'd go back into the body, pain, hot blood running down my body, huge pool of blood accelerating. And just my left knee was opened to the bone, like all the ligaments and tendons there. And I was looking down in looking underneath my kneecap, looking at the workings of the knee joint, and it just hemorrhaging, just heartbeat by heartbeat, just flooding. This blood was flooding out of my body. And then as this pool of blood accelerated away from my body, it got to a certain kind of diameter, and that was enough for me to just really lose the attachment to the body, lose that kind of ability to stay connected. And that was when I started really lifting up above my body, looking down from this detached perspective and seeing this situation unfold with a really kind of mute experience of what was happening. So everything was dialed down, everything was kind of opaque and dull, and I was being pulled up away from my body, like literally, not against my will, but not by choice. And I was just lifting up, slowly, gently. And I remember the feeling or the concept of looking up and seeing this sort of very vague column of white light opening up above me. And then again, this sort of, I would come back down a little bit and remember the drama and feel the concern for this body, like, wow, it's bleeding out. This is, I knew it was happening, and there's nothing I could do. So then that sort of awareness was dawning. I'm dying, or the body's dying at least.
Had you realised that you were dying at this point, or were you just in what was going on?
It was a combination, like a sort of a split level of consciousness. There was a bodily awareness of that this body is bleeding out and it's no longer habitable. But there was also this dual awareness of it's okay, you'll be fine, and you're going to another place. So this cylinder, this column of opaque white light opened up above me, and I went into it. The very beginning of it, as I entered it, I remember this awareness coming upon me, upon my consciousness, that that's right, this overwhelming remembrance of having done this many, just countless times before, and that it was nothing to worry about, and you'll be fine, and you don't have to sweat it. And I just opened into this sort of blissful space, and welcomed this sort of feeling of homecoming that was coming over me. And I went further and further into this space, this sort of cylinder, this column. And as I went higher and higher up, I felt this kind of expansiveness coming over my consciousness, and this sort of welcoming sort of feeling. I didn't really see any personalities, or I didn't recognize any kind of figures or faces or anything like that, but there was just an overwhelming feeling of homecoming and kind of warmth and acceptance and love and peace, and just relaxed. I just felt extremely relaxed. So I went up, and then the next thing I remember was my buddy's mum was an ex-nurse.
Well, that's handy.
Lovely English lady. Yeah. And I remember she was slapping my face to bring me back in, and I remember this sensation of being sucked slowly back down into my body, and then sitting in my body and feeling my face getting slapped like this, and her screaming my name to try and bring me back. And I was still very distant from my body, still very detached, and I could feel her slapping my face, and I was like, I got to come back, and I didn't want to. Like, this place above felt more, perhaps more like home than the physical reality, the material reality. And I went back up again, and it opened and expanded into this beautiful space. Again, got this wonderful feeling of just formality, like this death was this sort of systematic formality. It was nothing to be feared. It had been done countless times before. And I was letting go of this idea of it being this terrible thing, and getting all this kind of learning beyond language, kind of intuitive inputs coming from this space, and incredible, wonderful, highly charged, really high energy, high frequency energy. But then again, I was being drawn back down with these sensations on my body. This lovely lady Anne slapping my face and yelling at me, and doing the sternum thing, trying to get me to remember to come back. And then I remember being sucked quite forcefully back down into my body and inhabiting it fully again, and feeling my hands and feeling feeling it move, and feeling the gravity again, and feeling embodied. And then she laid me down on the ground. She had beach towels, and she had towels and tea towels and all sorts of towels, and was just tying huge knots over all these lacerations to stop me bleeding out, and elevating the limbs, and talking to me, and slapping me, and keeping me conscious and in my body. And then before I knew it, I was in the car and off to the medical center. And I was there for, I forget, perhaps something like 6 or 7 hours getting stitched up. It was over 200 stitches.
Goodness. Wow.
Poor doctor there. He had his job cut out for him that day.
Yeah.
He was there for a long time, and delicate work. Like, I'd hemorrhaged so much, and there was such a mess, and he did a fantastic job. Like, the scars have healed so well, and there's nothing that doesn't work properly.
Yeah.
He did an amazing job, saved my life that day, and I was on that table for hours, and weeks and weeks afterwards, just really weak. It was a close one. Lost a lot of blood, and so weeks and weeks of recovery and sort of sitting in a very different space, I must say, afterwards.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Josh. I have so many questions and I want to know so much information, but can we just go back to you? You said something quite early on about how you knew that you were dying and that you're right there and that death was something to welcome, that you'd done this thousands of times before.
That was significant. That was a significant moment.
Yeah, I can imagine. Could you remember any of those previous lives, or did you have any insight that made it all connect and make sense?
Not really, Kirsty. I don't recall any concrete glances back in time, so to speak, into past lives, but it's just one of homecoming. This word formality, I always seem to use that word like it was just a formality, a process that was unchanging, that it was just very, very easy for some reason to let go of the body. There was just that remembrance. The remembrance was profound, and that was what changed me a lot later on in life. It was nothing to really fear about, to be feared, and to be happy and to let go when the time comes. That was the main message.
Yeah. Okay. So you talk about how you no longer have this fear of death.
Yeah.
Is that because you think that we're going to go straight back to that place and that it is a safe place, a home almost?
I can only speak from my own experience. For myself, yes, that would certainly be how I would feel about it for sure. I would say that for sure.
Did you have any ideas as to why this happened and why this happened to you specifically at that age? You must have questioned how you had what did you say, an ex-nurse on the scene with you?
Yeah.
Like there's got to be, I just think life's got purpose. There's got to be a reason why she was there. And
sure. I think, as life went on later on, I was only 11. I didn't make sense of anything when I was 11. But sure, as life went on, it kind of, that time in my life, that event, and the weeks and months afterwards, certainly I look back on now and think that yes, there was a definite fork in the road, and I took a certain fork, largely based on that event. They weren't conscious decisions. Like I said, I was only very young, but I just followed the Joseph Campbell, follow your bliss. I kind of just followed my own intuition and my own wisdom, if you like, based on that profound experience. I had no narrative for it when I was that old. I didn't tell anyone. I told my mum, which is lucky. She had something similar as well, so we were able to put it in its rightful place instead of just brushing it over and being told that you were just probably in shock and you were dreaming or something. So I was lucky in that there was a place for it. So it stayed open, it stayed alive as an experience. It wasn't just shut down straight away.
Yeah. Do you have any idea as to why you think it happened?
It's hard to say. I mean, on one hand, it's easy to say I would rather have not nearly bled out and had all those scars and all that recovery time and all that sort of thing. But it certainly has propelled me down some very personally meaningful lines of inquiry in my life. Very fulfilling, very fulfilling. Not being so magnetized by the superficial aspects of life and being, extremely inquisitive about the deeper meanings around life and those big existential questions. For sure, I've pursued them fully to the absolute best of my ability for years and years and years now.
Yeah, you talked at one point about how you believed that you'd gone up, and you talked about being up there. Mm-hmm. So you had a perception. Is that when people talk about heaven, do you think that this was maybe heaven, or?
It's possible. There's certainly the color scheme was right, and the sort of feelings were comparable to religious scriptures. I can only again speak from my own experience. It was all of those sort of words. It was sublime. It was enchanting. It was transformative, transcendent. All of those sort of things that you'll find in most of the world's religions, for sure. I don't know about heaven. I think that's kind of, that's a personal perspective. But for myself, it was that and many other things that transferred directly back into normal reality, material life.
Yeah, amazing how it stayed with you and how it's transformed. You see, you've been really curious and really looking into things here.
Yeah.
How has that changed your spiritual beliefs? You touched on that briefly, that you've been inquisitive.
Sure. So it really was the very beginning of a whole set of questions that came up in my life through my teenage years. After that experience, it happened when I was 11, which then the questions got bigger and bigger and held more and more importance for me as the years went by, until when I was 26, I left the military lifestyle that I was living in at the time and ended up being a monk, studying nothing but those sort of heightened states and the religious experiences. So it became finding the answers, or finding the context for that experience became an overwhelming kind of mission, and it took me away from a career that I'd invested heavily in. And I can't say enough for honoring that choice to follow and go into those questions. They've been the answers to those questions have been, without a doubt, the most rewarding parts of my life, and have given me an incredible set of skills to help others to come to peace within and meaningful kinds of life.
That's awesome. Did you see any beings or experience any kind of other person or?
There was like I said, there was no real concrete recognition of any face or relative or any ancestor kind of thing, but there were some kind of presences there. They were very vague, and there were sort of silhouettes of figures that I would pass by as I moved up this column, this sort of cylinder, and I didn't recognize anyone I knew, like grandparents I'd known when I was little, or I didn't recognize anyone at a personal level.
Had you had many people pass away before you, like grandparents and people at that time in your life?
No, that started happening a bit later in my late teens, early 20s. Grandparents started leaving.
Yeah, do you may think maybe that's why there weren't people there that you recognised to greet you?
Could be. Yeah, I wondered about that. I've read stories and heard stories of others who had profound recognitions with deceased family members, you know, a real like, wow, that's grandpa, you know.
Yeah.
An undeniable sort of experience. But yeah, perhaps you're right. I didn't have that myself, but I've read of people who have reconnected with their dead relatives, for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing how they're so different, isn't it?
Just that homecoming, that welcoming, and that recognition, perhaps at a soul level or some kind of spiritual level like that, was mind-blowing. I was only 11, and there I was going through this experience, and just profound, and it derailed school. Like, school became just, like Corinthian columns in art history. What would I ever need that? I saw right through the schooling. It all just dropped away. And I was reading, at 12 years old, I was reading Oswald Spengler and Friedrich Nietzsche and the Bhagavad Gita and the Yoga Sutras or anything I could get my hands on. And that didn't stop for some 15 years, really.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
To try and put that experience in context. So it was the end of school. School became, I often use the word underwhelming. It was a profoundly underwhelming time, school, after I had that experience. So
because you sensed that it wasn't actually important in the whole big picture?
Not to me.
Yeah, okay.
And it certainly is, don't get me wrong, but at that time of my life, wow, going to school seemed just, I had more important business.
Yeah, for sure. What was your life like straight after this happened? You said that you didn't really talk about the experience except to your mum a bit later.
Yeah, like I say, it was difficult to kind of put it into words. 11. What's the conversation when you're 11 years old? It's whatever, BMX or skateboarding or something. Who wants to come to the river for a swim, whatever. Not who's had a near death experience and I met the angels or something. So I did sort of did try, but my buddies, of course, they're like, "What are you talking about? Weird
Yeah.
story, man." So I didn't stuff it back down, but I put it in its place to reflect on. I kept it in a quite a prominent position in my mind. I didn't just let it sink back into the back of my mind and kind of, that was weird, and didn't go back to it. No, it's so impactful and so life changing. Like I say, schooling aspect, just how important it was. I kept keeping it in the front of my mind to revisit and get the learnings from as the years went by. It was profoundly, for me, the main thing. There's a whole lot of philosophies in the world, and there's a thing about fear. Fear is a huge piece of what holds people back generally in life. And facing the fear of death at that age, things were very different for me, and I kind of missed a lot of the drama of the teenage years. I didn't get drawn into that sort of stuff. I was always thinking at deeper levels.
Did you feel like you came back with any specific task or idea, or were imparted anything for the rest of your life that you had to fulfill, or any direction? Good
question. Not at the time. I had this burning desire to be a soldier from when I was really young, and that stayed front and center, if you like, in my mind. But there was this kind of idea of being some kind of teacher at some stage, and that never left. That never went away. For all the way through the army years, there was always this kind of idea that there was more to do, and that this, as awesome as soldiering was, and I loved it, it was absolutely fantastic lifestyle. It didn't quite reach the level. It didn't quite completely absorb me. I always felt that there was more for me to do beyond soldiering, and when I did leave the military and step away from that lifestyle, it was the right decision, and things certainly took shape in a more authentic space very, very quickly after I left the military. The alignment with person and task was profound. There was no gap between those two things. I was definitely doing what I should be doing very quickly after I left the military.
Wow. And do you think that your experience enabled you to be able to see these things easier?
I think
to be
so.
More connected?
Yeah, I think so, Kirsty. I think, I do a lot of work as a coach around goal setting and getting clear. It's often quite a thing for people to get clear on their goals, like really, really, really dial it right in. For me, I never had that problem. It was always extremely clear. And I think the foundation for that clarity was that experience that just stripped away all the superficial kind of attractions that there are so many of, and held me magnetized by this core sort of directive, like find out what that means, understand the body, mind, spirit connection, develop a really good set of skills around that, and then help others to enjoy a life that's not so paralyzed by fear and overthinking and overanalysis and all of those things, procrastination, just to enjoy life now.
Yeah.
Not to put things off. That's the most important message, was just go do stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I love that message. And how do you feel about death today?
It's a personal thing for me, for myself personally. And in the years when I was a monk and living in ashrams and exploring consciousness, I had so much stuff that was directly comparable to that near-death experience during deep meditation, that for me, going in and out of my body for years and years and years in meditation, reaching all sorts of refined levels of consciousness under the guidance of very experienced teachers in India. For me personally, no, it doesn't hold any kind of, there's no repulsion or fear or any kind of anxiety around it, really. Nothing really. It'll just happen. It's part of being born. You're just as natural as anything. There's nothing to worry about or to fear on the other side. The main sort of message that I have is to enjoy life. Live well and you'll die well. Then you'll be happy. You'll have done the things you were here to do and experienced the things you really, really were called to experience. And that's the way I feel. That's the kind of mindset I have.
Oh, I love it. I totally agree with that. We've got to live life well so that we can die well. Josh, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience with us.
More than welcome.
I love these stories. I love how you've connected it right through, like you said, you were quite young at the time. Mm-hmm. You've connected it through, join the dots, and how it still has an impact on how you live your life today. And it's connecting with a bigger picture, connecting with a bigger source than just being in life and doing what's right in front of us.
Right on. Yep, absolutely agree.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you for your time and sharing your story.
Pleasure, Kirsty. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast show. If you've enjoyed it, please share it with your friends, tell people about it. I'd love to get these messages out there. You can also connect with me on Facebook at Kirsty Salisbury Official, and you can subscribe to receive updates for new episodes as they come about. I'm Kirsty Salisbury, and this is Let's Talk Near Death.